what can you do with Microsoft Power BI? So now I'll hand this over to Greg so he can tell us all about Power BI.
We're going to talk about exactly what Power BI is, because it's a pretty big umbrella. Then we'll talk about two of the different things that fall underneath that umbrella, which is Power BI Desktop and the Power BI Service. We'll then take a look at the different ways that we grab data, working with a data set. We'll also take a look at creating a report and get an intro into dashboards for designers. At any time, we can take your questions, and I can either deal with them right away, or we'll most likely deal with some of the questions towards the end. All right, let's get started. Power BI is a bunch of different things. It actually started with Excel. So you'll notice that if you open Excel Desktop, there's a bunch of new add-ins, and they've slowly added these things over the years. I'll just click on a blank workbook here, just so I've got something in front of me. I'll then go to File, I'll go to Options. On the left-hand side is your add-ins. And when you click on add-ins, these are all your different add-ins. What you'll need to do though is you'll need to switch it to COM add-ins, because normally these things are turned off. You have Power Map, Power View, Power Pivot, and these need to be turned on. Power Query is part of 2016 and part of 2019, so it isn't something you have to install, and it isn't something you have to turn on for those versions. Once you turn them on, you'll notice that you get a couple of new tabs like Inquire and Power Pivot. Power Pivot is going to manage your data model, but to get data into your model, you head to Data and you go to Get Data. Careful. In most versions of Excel, there's a section before this. The section before this is called Get External Data, and it's retired. Don't use that. You want to use this section, which is called Get and Transform. You can grab data from just about anywhere, from files, from databases, the Azure Cloud, online services. I'm willing to bet you recognize a couple there. Other sources might as well say sky's the limit. You have a lot of different places where you grab it from open data feeds. So this is possible as well. If I have an open data feed, I can easily connect to it and download the information. Oops, not the data feed that I wanted. That's the data feed. So again, other sources, my open data feed, and I'll just paste that in there. Now, if I require a username or a password, it allows me to enter a username or a password, but more importantly, I can connect to this data feed and select the information that I need. If there are relationships between the tables, it detects the relationships and creates them. If there are no relationships, it tries to create relationships. This that you're seeing is Power Query. So if there's something that you don't want, if you want to edit some of the information before it comes in, you can click the Edit button. This allows you to edit the tables of data before they even enter your data model. This way too, you're not importing information that you really don't care about. So if there's customer information that you don't need or you don't want, you don't have to import it all. Same with employee information. Things like title of currency might not be something that you would ever use. In fact, I can see that most of this stuff would be things that I just would never use. I'm not interested in the employee's photos or anything like that, at least not for the reports that I want. So I can highlight, one column, and just like Excel, I could hold my Shift key down and click all the way on postal code. I could then right-click and remove all of these columns. The idea is that I don't need all this stuff. right? Notes, who they report to. I can just take it all out. What you're trying to do is clean up this data model before you bring the data into Excel. These are the different relationships. So these are actual lookups or equijoins or one-to-many joins. Either way, all I have to do is hit close and load. So I'm going to take out the data that I don't want. I filter the different things that I don't need, and I close it and load it. And what this does is this creates my data model inside of Excel. Slowly but surely. 8 rows loaded. Come on, little guy. There we go. Up top, if I go to Power Pivot is what manages the data model. So if I click on Manage, this is my data model. I'll need to get all of my tables into my data model. It's probably a good idea to give everything a name as well. The tables are already named. This one's products. I can call this products. But when I click into products, I can head to my Power Pivot tab and click the button, Add to Data Model. This takes products and adds it to my data model. This one is orders. I'll also add orders to my data model. I add it to my data model, and now I've got products and orders. I'll add the rest of my tables to my data model. This one's order details. I'll add it to the data model. This one is employees. And I'll add this one to the data model. This is customers. I'll add that to the data model. And finally, categories. And this also gets added. The harder part of this happens in the diagram view. And this is where you create the different relationships. So if I click diagram view, this is where you really have to know your data and your database. This is where I create different relationships between different tables, and everything must be connected. If it's not connected, it won't work. You won't be able to use it in the data model. So out of orders, I can create a relationship with the employees table. I create the relationship on employee ID, and that creates a one-to-many relationship. One-to-many. For the customer, I take the customer ID and drag it and drop it right on top of customer ID and orders. In order details, I also have order ID. I can take order ID, drag it, and drop it right on top of order ID and orders. And the only way that you would know to do this is you have an intimate knowledge of your database. You know this forward and backward. And it's the only way that you would understand how to do this. You've got to know your data. I can take product ID, drag it, and drop it right on top of product ID and products. And because all of this is connected now, I can make one great big report using all of these tables, like a pivot table. Normally with a pivot table, you can only use one data set, one table. Now I can use all of these tables because they're all connected, except for categories. See how I have a line between categories and customers? To fix it, I'll go back to my data model. I didn't realize that categories is all the way over here. Forgot about this one. So in products, I have category ID, and in categories, I have category ID. I can click on category ID in products and drag it and drop it on top of category ID in categories. Now, if I go back, there's no line. It's a light gray line that you'll see. Now I can grab what I want. I can go to orders and grab the order ID, drop it into rows. I can grab the freight, drop it into freight, and see how much freight we paid for each of these orders. I can take the ship date, drop it into columns. It shows me all my different ship dates. If I don't like what I've done, I can go to Analyze and blow up my pivot table and start all over again. Head to orders, grab the order ID. Now I can go to customers. Oops. Sorry, I can go to customers. I can fold out customers, take the company name and drag the company name over top of the order ID. So I see which company ordered what. Now it won't straighten itself out until I grab one more field from orders. In orders, I can take the freight, drag the freight, and drop it into values. And now I see the sum of the freight. So Power Pivot manages the data model so we can build things like this. Power View is something else. Power View is actually a button, and the button is hidden. So that's not terribly helpful. To add the button up top, you can click the drop down here right beside your undo. This is how you customize the quick access toolbar. I click the drop down, I choose more commands. Once I choose more commands, these are all the popular commands, I'll switch this, and I'll switch it to commands not in the ribbon. These are things that you don't have a button for. In commands not in the ribbon, I'm looking for Power View. You would expect that to be under the P's, but it's not. It's under the I's. Insert a Power View report. You'd have to know this was here. I'll click OK, and then to build the dashboard, I click Power View. Oh, yeah. It's mad at me. It's upset. Hold on for 1 second. Let's do it here. All right. So I'll go to more commands. I'll add that button back in, not in the ribbon. It's under the I's. It's called Insert Power View Report. When I click the button, it inserts a sheet. Slowly but surely. And this would create a dashboard inside of Excel. And this works identical, absolutely identical to Power BI Desktop. And that's where I want to take you next. Let's take a look at Power BI Desktop. I'll close Excel. I'll save changes if it does ask. I'll call it my Power BI file. All right, along the same idea, I'll open up Power BI Desktop. Slowly but surely. It has the same abilities as Excel as far as importing data. Slowly. So slowly and eventually. Oh yes, and it about once a month it asks for an update. So Power BI changes once a month. Once a month they keep adding more stuff to this. It's kind of weird to sign in because if you already have an account, you have to tell it that you already have an account. Then I just got to give it my my email address just to sign in. So as long as you have a Power BI account, you use your typical Outlook account to sign into it. You know, I'll just kind of copy this. And I'll just paste in my email address and away I go. You'll know that you signed in properly when it shows your name on the splash screen and your name also appears in the upper right-hand side. More importantly, if I go to get data here, there's my open data source, my open data feed. But if I go to more, it's insane. I mean, I wish I had more time with you, but look at all the different places that you can import, right? There's Google BigQuery, there's Amazon Redshift, and Microsoft notoriously does not play well with others, and here they are playing well with others. Right. Playing well with different places like MailChimp, GitHub. Okay, yeah, well they bought GitHub, so that doesn't count. Look at them all. There's SurveyMonkey. Right? That's not Microsoft. Anyways, I want an open data source, so that's under Other. So I'll choose OData Feed and click on Connect. I put in the open data source. Oops, wrong one. Not the one I want. This is the one I want. So I'll just paste that in. Away we go. We connect to the service. This gives me the opportunity to sign in with different credentials. It's anonymous, so you're good. If not, I would put in a username and password. And I start selecting all the stuff that I need. Grab all my different tables of information that I need, and I load it. This works the same way. This also creates a data model. The difference is that this data model inside Power BI Desktop, you can share the data model. So the people that are good with data models, they work on the data models. Then people that aren't so good with data models, they can concentrate on making reports, dashboards. See, there's my stuff all loaded. All my tables, all there. Now, if I'd like to see my tables, on the left-hand side, I can go to data and see my data. See my categories, see my customers. There's customers, there's employees. If I go to my relationships, all the relationships are properly created already. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to forget anything. To make the pivot table, I can go back to, or to make any report, I go back to my report area, which is where I'm here now. This is a blank sheet of paper where I can build my report. So again, out of orders, I can take orders, I can take the order ID and I can drag it and drop it right onto the page. Now, when I do that, the first thing that it's going to want to do is it's going to want to take my order, I throw it onto the page. There it is here in the axes. So I can see it here, rename it, move it to somewhere different. But I also have these fields, legend, the value. So I can take freight and drag freight into the value. It then shows me freight by order ID. I can change this and I can change it to, say, a matrix. That's a pivot table. So I now see the order, I see the freight. Where things change a little bit with the Power BI desktop is creating the hierarchy. See, if I grab out of customers, if I grab the company name and drop it above rows, then what it shows me is it shows me the company. It shows me the company, and it might be at the top for you, but it might be at the bottom, but there's now navigation for me to drill down. So when I drill down, I see the individual order IDs. Now I can take this information and I can throw it in a different type of chart, like a stacked bar chart.
Greg, can you share a link to the database you're using?
Yeah, sure. Now on the right-hand side, I could build a different tile because that's what you've done. You've now just built a tile on a page. This is a report. I can then take, say, again, company name and drag it onto the page. Then I could take, I don't know, let's take order ID out of orders. Take order ID out of orders and drag it and drop it onto the same tile. The information should start to repeat. Then take ship country and drag ship country and drop it onto the same tile. But then take the tile and make it a map, like this one. The location is the ship country. The legend shows me the companies. For the size, I could take the order ID out of orders and drag the order ID into size. So what I'm looking at is a count of all the different order IDs, and depending on the country, depending on the size, it shows me who orders the most based on amount. but it doesn't stop here. See here, I've got freight by company. So I can click on Rattlesnake Canyon. And when I do that, it drills into Rattlesnake Canyon. Right on top of the bar. Go back up. Or quick stop. And I'll go back up. So it creates an interactive dashboard. Well, an interactive report. It's not a dashboard yet, not until I publish it. I'll give the page a name just like normal. I'll double click on the page's name and I'll call it company orders. I can insert another sheet. In this sheet, once again, out of order details, I could take the order ID and drag it and drop it in here. I could then put a check mark beside quantity and a check mark beside price. And I could put this in a table. Oops. Sorry. Yes, table. So I have the ordered ID, I have the quantity, and I have the price. The problem is it's giving you a total, right? And sometimes I don't want that. So for values, it shows me what it's doing. It's not showing me, it's not totaling the order ID, it's not summarizing it. For the quantity, it is summarizing the quantity. If I say don't summarize the quantity, then the order IDs repeat. The unit price, same thing. I can tell it not to summarize the unit price. It wasn't summarizing it anyways. You can add fields. Say I wanted a line total field where it takes the quantity and multiplies it by the unit price. Then I switch views and I go here. I go to the datasheet view. In the datasheet view, I see all my different tables. Order details is the one that has the unit price and the quantity. This is where I could add a field. Up top, I have a button to add new columns. That's what I want. I'd like to add a new column. I'll click on new column. It inserts a brand new column, and after the equal sign, I type in opening squared bracket, quantity, times, which is shift 8, unit price. So quantity times unit price, I hit my answer key, and it adds it. I'll give it a better name than column. I'll call it line total. All one word. Just about everything, you can right click and I can refresh it. I can edit this thing. I can rename it. I can delete it. I've got a drop down at the top so I can sort and filter. To see more features, you can go to modeling. And in modeling, I can tell it that, look, hey, your currency. Currency English, United States. And it formats it. But I can do the same thing for unit price. I can say, hey, unit price, right, your currency. And I can do myself a huge favor, go to order ID and tell it, look, it's not a whole number. Order ID, it's text. Same with the product ID. It's text. You don't want the computer thinking it can take order IDs and add it because it's a number field. It's not. That's not the way you use it. You're using it as a text field, not a number field. You can't take one product ID, add it with another product ID, and get a brand new product. It doesn't work that way. So now I got a new field, line total. I can go back to the report. I can take line total and drag line total in. I can click over to the right-hand side. I can head to customers and grab the company name. If you wanted to, you could use this as a slicer. That's another visual that you have. I switch it to a slicer, and then these are the different companies' orders. I could still add a map. I have enough room. I can grab the company, grab the country, switch it to a map. You got to admit, not bad. Let's give this a name. I'll call this one orders by company. Oops. Spelling counts. All right. There's so much more that you can add to this too. Like, I'm not even scratching the surface. You have different themes. So it makes it easy and simple for you to format all these different sheets and all these different visuals without having to do it manually. On the report, you can add things like text boxes or images or different shapes. You also have different buttons for navigation. So I can go left or right. So I can go ahead a sheet or back a sheet. I can add reset buttons. So if they start filtering the visual, they've got a button to reset. I'm going to save this thing. So the idea is that we built the data model. Once we built the data model, we created this report. I'll give the report a name. I'll call it Contoso Company Orders. Much like a PDF, you're going to need to figure out where to save that and keep that file. You're going to need that file if you want to make any changes to the report. You're also going to need that file if you want to make any changes to the data model, because once I publish this, you're not going to be able to edit the data model in the Power BI service. So I hit publish. I choose my workspace. You'll have all your different workspaces listed here, but I'm only working with my workspace right now, so I'll hit select, and it'll publish it. That's it. Once I published it, I'm finished with desktop. Now what I have to do is open a browser. I have to open a browser and go to Office 365. The easiest way to get there is to type in office.com/portal. It's like a catch-all. So it doesn't matter what your company address is, all companies, they'll lead here. Anyways, now that I've published it, I can go to all my apps and head to Power BI. Incidentally, do not make the huge mistake of thinking that Office 365, Office 2016, and Office 2019 is the same as your dad's office, all right? This is not your dad's office. This is not the office that different people have grown up with. You can't pick and choose different products and say, yeah, you know what? We're not going to use Teams. Yeah, we're not going to use SharePoint. Because if you decide not to use some of these products, you break Office 365. You will not be happy with Office 365 because it doesn't work like Office 2010. It's not the same. Anyways, I got Power BI here. Those programs are not a decision that IT can make. That's a much, much larger conversation. All right. My workspaces, they're on the left-hand side. All I got to do is click on my workspace. Now, I haven't built a dashboard. It's a report that I uploaded. And the report that I uploaded was Contoso company orders. There it is there. I can click the report and see what it looks like. My different sheets are down below. So I can flip back and forth between my different sheets and see my different visuals. I can add bookmarks. And this is something that everybody can do, right? Once this is published, as long as they have access to this report, they can add things like bookmarks. Bookmarks enable you to capture different views. Like, I'll do save a lot markets here. If I want to remember this view, I go to bookmarks and I add a bookmark. I call it save a lot. Now I've got a bookmark for it. I can reset this. It resets it, but I can go to bookmarks and there's my save a lot bookmark. And maybe a bunch of things that I've kind of done and I want to remember it. And that's what the bookmark is for. I can make this a favorite report, and now this particular report is part of my favorites. When you hover over top of each of these tiles, you will notice that you now have a push pin. And that's how you make your dashboards. So using that push pin, if I like this visual, I pin it. And I pin it to my dashboard. I can create a new one here called Greg's Dashboard. And then this visual goes into that dashboard. I'll pin it, and now it's part of my dashboard. To see my dashboard, I can use the breadcrumbs up top here. This is Contoso company orders. That just takes me back to where I was. I can click on my workspace, and that'll take me back to my workspace. Back at my workspace, I've created this thing called Greg's Dashboard. And when I click on Greg's Dashboard, it shows me my dashboard. I can go back to my workspace. I can go back to my report, and I can open up my company reports again. The idea is that I can pin any of these visuals and pin them to my dashboard. The reports don't have to have anything to do with each other. I can grab reports from HR, reports from IT, reports from operations, reports from manufacturing, and mash it all together in one dashboard so I get the report and the view that I've always wanted. So my point, everybody from the CEO all the way down should be creating their own dashboards, their own. You don't create dashboards for other people. people create their own dashboards. In a perfect world. But now I've got a dashboard. If I want to share the dashboard with anybody, I click on share. If I want to get alerts and emails about this dashboard, then I subscribe to the dashboard. So if any of the data or visuals change, I get an email about it. I'll go back to my workspace. All right. So I got dashboards, I got reports. When you upload the report, you get this little light bulb. And what the light bulb does is it does this thing called Quick Insights. What Quick Insights does is it looks at your data, runs different algorithms, and analyzes your data and tries to create visuals that it thinks is important to you. Another good resource is to click on Get Data. When I click on Get Data, I can choose different samples and see some different samples for HR, for customers, for IT. Here's one for retail. I click on retail. This is just a dashboard, a bunch of reports that I can download and take a look at and see if it's useful to me. It's called Retail Analysis Sample. And of course, all these different reports come with it. Not all these different reports, just a couple. My insights, that light bulb, it's ready now. When I click on View Insights, it builds all these different visuals that it thinks might be important to me. Like this one, the line total. I can pin this and I can pin it to my dashboard. Yeah, pin that to my dashboard. I like the visual. I didn't have to build these. Some of these might not mean anything at all to you. So you have to make sure that you've got data in your data set, data in your data model that makes sense. If not, these visuals won't make sense. I'll go back to my workspace. The other thing is dashboards allow you to ask questions. Here's the retail analysis sample, and when you build your dashboards, you always get ask a question about your data up top. So this enables me to click in here and I can say, all right, I want to see, let's see, new store, buy, I'll do by district manager. See how it's helping me? Everybody got 10 new stores. But this is a visual that you can pin. See, in the upper right-hand side here, I can pin this visual. I can do by district. I could also do sales by, district manager. And I can tell it to do it in a pie chart. Or I really don't like pies. I like trees better. And I can pin it to Greg's dashboard. Even though it's got nothing to do with nothing. But I didn't have to build it. I didn't have to ask IT to figure this out for me and come back with a report that takes sales by district manager. I didn't have to do any of this. And the suggestions that you saw as I was typing, you can control all of that stuff.
So one question here. So if the data that you're linking all this to is updated, you'll see that reflected in the dashboard right away, or is there a notification?
No, it'll be reflected right away. Yeah, it'll be reflected right away. And one of the things that you can do, like with my Contoso company orders, is I can click this button. So here I'm in data sets. I can schedule a refresh. This is a bogus error message that you get. You can edit the credentials and then it'll be fine. It's just a bogus error message. But I can come in here and I can schedule a refresh. I can see, yeah, keep it up to date, keep it daily, and have it refresh on a daily basis. Or I can say no, on a weekly basis, every Monday or whatever. Or I could add another time schedule as well, and say, yeah, this time, this date, 2 p.m. Pacific time, it updates. You got to admit that's pretty darn cool. It means that you never have to redo your reports. You never have to redo your dashboards. It can be based off of live data. So as the data changes, it updates on a daily basis. Or you can hit a refresh button and it'll go out and refresh right there and then. But a lot of times I set up schedules. I can set up a daily schedule and tell it, look, every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, refresh the data. I'm not even coming close to scratching the surface with what this product does. This product is probably hands down one of the most amazing products that Microsoft has come up with for analyzing data. I don't have to teach you SQL statements. I don't have to teach you how to connect to an API. I don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is click buttons. That's it. So if it's a website, if it's a SQL server, if I go to more here, it doesn't matter what it is. JSON files, XML files, loads of databases, the Azure cloud, and they keep adding stuff here all the time. Every month, something new. Even the visuals. You got pie charts and graphs and scatter charts and all this other stuff, but if you click this 3-period button, choose import from marketplace, the visuals are insane. You have all these different visuals. You want gauges? Go to gauges. There's all these different gauges. Infographics, right? Loads of these things. Honestly, I can't keep up with it. The amount of stuff that they add, right? Things to show time, it's brilliant. Advanced analytics, so you can do a box and whisker. Normally the course is about 2 days, but honestly, even after 2 days, there's just still more stuff. There's tons of things that you can do with this product. It's incredible. But for building visuals, hands down, this is my #1 product. There are competing products, but they're costly and they're hard to use. I also have to show you how to do a bit of programming and some SQL statements. And not everybody wants to learn how to do all that. So we've reached the end of our time, but as you can tell, there's a lot more to this stuff. There really is. I want to thank you today for coming out and just taking a look at our webinar, seeing what Power BI can do. Like I said, I haven't even scratched the surface. There's just so many things that this thing does. But if you do get the chance, play around with this piece of software. It really is a neat bit of software to goof around with. We've got a couple of different courses that you can go through and learn how to use this stuff a little bit better. We've got the fundamentals as well as analyzing data. So a couple of different courses, and both of them are about 2 days each. If you are looking for additional information, go to globalknowledge.com. We've got a ton more webinars that you just got to check out, as well as some white papers, courses, special offers, and lots of other stuff.